Oh, jeez. Oh, great, that's gonna go in. That'll be the cold opener. Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. We're making bagels. It's a really, really fun, cool process. It doesn't use too many ingredients. Fun fact, bagels are boiled before they're baked. And what's gonna be really cool about this recipe is I'm going to cook them outside in the wood burning oven. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. My dad would go every Sunday, would ride his bike and bring us back bagels. That kind of formed for me my idea of a good bagel, which is something small, crusty, chewy, and it shouldn't be like a puffy, dough mass. To me, bagels now are just too big and it's just not really a bagel. So I'm gonna show you how to achieve that. I'm gonna do everything bagels. That's my preferred bagel because it's why choose? Just having everything. This is kind of a modified version of the bagel recipe in Dessert Person, which is an everything bagel, but I mix the seeds in. So I'm gonna show you kind of a more classic everything bagel recipe. I'm starting with bread flour. I am adding rye flour. That's not really typical in a bagel recipe, but I love it because it adds a little bit of that pumpernickel-y flavor, which I really, really like. And it's a whole grain flour. Then I have yeast, kosher salt, water. This is all that goes into the dough. It's a very, very straightforward bread recipe. I'm gonna do everything. So I have some everything spice mix here, but of course you could do whatever you want. You could do plain, you could do poppy, sesame, salt, garlic, it's up to you. Some cornmeal just for dusting the sheet tray, and then barley malt syrup, which is an important ingredient. We make a solution with this and boil the bagels in it first. This is a type of sugar. It helps to develop this beautiful, crusty exterior to the bagels. What I don't have here is the fixings from when we're gonna eat the bagels, which I haven't purchased yet, but will have for tomorrow. Your cream cheese, your lox, your onion, your capers. I have out my stand mixer. You don't really need this for putting together the dough. I just already had it out and it's easy. Bagel dough is a low hydration dough, meaning it has a lower proportion of water than a lot of other styles of bread. And that means the dough is stiff and very easy to handle. So it's very makeable by hand. I'm just gonna let the mixer do the work for me today. So I have the dough hook. Now I don't have a lot of the other special equipment out because it's kind of a lot of stuff. So I'm just gonna name it, and because most of it's gonna happen tomorrow. So we need a couple of sheet trays for forming the bagels. I'm gonna use a scale for portioning everything out. I'm gonna use a large stock pot or Dutch oven for boiling. You need kind of a wide, large pot, a spider, a plate for putting on the seeds, and then of course the wood burning oven and a peel. I don't know. I haven't done as much bread baking in the oven. We've mostly been doing pizza, which is more live fire. For bagels, it's gonna be really different. I'm not sure what's gonna happen. We'll see. All right, so the first step is gonna be putting together the dough. So it's the afternoon of the day before I'm gonna bake. And so we put together the dough the day before, and that just makes it easier on the day of for getting all your bagels together. I'm gonna start with my bread flour in my stand mixer bowl. If you're doing this by hand, just use a large mixing bowl. Then I'm gonna add the rye flour. It's 5 cups of bread and 1 cup of rye. If you don't wanna use rye flour, just replace it with more bread flour. Then we're gonna mix in the salt. Salt is usually 2% by weight to flour. Then this is instant yeast, a teaspoon. A lot of bagel recipes begin with what's called a pre-ferment, which is a portion of the flour and water mixed with a little bit of yeast. And that is left to sit out at room temp or can be put in the fridge overnight. That's left to sit before it's mixed with the rest of the ingredients for the dough. And the idea is that this helps to develop flavor by separating a portion and letting it sit ahead of time. But because we're making it the night before, I'm just mixing everything together. The whole dough is gonna sit overnight, and that's gonna help develop flavor. So now I'm gonna put this into my mixer, and I'm gonna make a little well in the center. I have 480 grams, almost exactly 2 cups of lukewarm water, very, just a couple temperatures above room temp. And so there's something called ideal dough temperature, which is basically the temperature that you want your dough to be to sort of encourage fermentation. And so for bagels, it's I think it's between 70 and 75. So if you're working in a cold kitchen, you want to use water that's a little bit warmer. If you're working in a hot kitchen, you can use water that's a little bit cooler. It's about 70 degrees in here. So I have water that's just a little bit above that. And also the friction of the mixing will increase the temperature as well. So I'm going to add the water. I lost a little bit. Now I'm going to turn this on. If doing this by hand, I would basically incorporate the water with like a wooden spoon. And then once all the water is absorbed, switch to just kneading it by hand. But I'm gonna let the mixer do it with the hook. It's a very stiff dough. It's very easy to handle. You can definitely knead it by hand. It actually just takes a little bit of like muscle strength to do it. I'm on the lowest speed, by the way. For a really stiff dough like this, I don't wanna stress out the mixer. So I'm gonna leave it on the lowest setting. And I'm gonna mix until this comes together and it's going to be smooth and supple, at least 5 to 10 minutes. So after several minutes in the mixer, you can see we have this very stiff dough. So I'm gonna continue this by hand. I don't really need to add any flour. It was a little tacky coming out of the mixer, but even just after like 30 seconds of kneading, it firms up quite a bit. So we want this to be pretty well developed, and development is really a term that refers to gluten production, gluten development. So it means we want like a very, very firm dough that has a lot of elasticity, which is an indication that there's a good amount of gluten. So we use bread flour, which is a higher protein flour that produces more gluten. So it's the proteins in wheat that when they come into contact with water produce gluten, which are these like stretchy strands that give bread its chew. And bagels, the predominant texture of bagels should be chewy. And I'm gonna continue to knead by hand until the dough gives me a lot of resistance. It's kind of a rocking motion with your body so that you can use your momentum. And I'm taking the heel of one hand and kind of pushing with the other hand to give it some extra strength. As I kind of rock forward, I push down and away onto the dough. And then as I move back, I kind of bring the dough up and give it a rotation. So I have my feet spaced apart, one in front and one behind. So let's take a look at the dough. It's nice and smooth. It's like super firm. When I poke it, see how it springs back like that? That's a sign of a moderately developed dough, basically. So I'm gonna dust this with flour, put it back in the bowl, cover it. This is going to sit out at room temp until it is somewhere between 50% expanded in size and doubled. So not quite doubled because it's gonna go into the fridge and that rise is gonna continue, but very slowly because it'll be cold. I'm just gonna get a little extra bench flour. One great thing about bagels is they are very freezable. So yes, this recipe makes a dozen. Maybe your family's not eating a dozen bagels in one sitting, but freeze the rest. A baker once gave me this tip, which I think is a really good tip, which is to take a photo with your phone of the size of the dough before that bulk fermentation or that first rise. And then that's your comparison point. Because like your memory it's not always gonna, you're just not gonna remember accurately. Depends on the temperature of your kitchen, but I would say anywhere from 1 to 2 hours for that rise. And then it'll go into the fridge. Then tomorrow on day 2 is the shaping of the bagels, the boiling, and the baking. So it's the next morning. I'm very excited. So I'm gonna pull out the dough. Cal and Vince started the fire, so the oven is heating up because that takes a little while. But we do need to let the bagels proof. So the next step is I'm gonna grab the dough, we're gonna shape them and let them proof at room temperature for a little while. In the time it's spent in the fridge, it has continued to rise and doubled in size. So this looks really good. So I'm gonna get the dough out onto the work surface. I don't really need flour because the dough is so stiff it doesn't really stick. This recipe makes a dozen bagels. They're each about 4 ounces. 4 ounces is kind of like a standard bagel size. So I'm going to start portioning and weighing. Is that a cat? Am I not gonna get a dozen? 2, 4, 6, 7. I really got like 11. I guess I didn't scale up enough. 6, 8, 10, 11. All right. Is it the new baker's dozen? Is 11 the new baker's dozen? All right, I got 11. I got 11 bagels. Now I'm gonna pre-shape. We're just gonna make little balls of dough here before we form the final bagel shape. So basically like pinch together like a bulb of garlic and a kind of smooth dome. And then I put that on the surface, pinch side down, just kind of roll it around the surface, cut my hand around it, roll it around, and then you get this kind of nice smooth shape. So I'm just gonna repeat that process with all the remaining pieces. And then because we've done a fair amount of manipulating of the dough, you know, we've worked that gluten, it's going to need a little bit of a rest, maybe like a 15-minute bench rest, so that the gluten can relax a little bit, and then we're able to form the bagel shape, and the dough's not going to fight us by kind of springing back. I'm gonna cover them, and after a 15-minute bench rest, I'll come back and I'll show you how to make that final bagel shape. So these are ready for shaping. The gluten has relaxed a little bit, so we will be able to kind of stretch the dough into the shape ring that we want. There are a couple of different techniques for shaping bagels. The easiest, I think, is basically to form balls like I did, and then to poke a hole. Literally, like poke a hole in it with your finger, and then work it into a ring. Now, the thing with bagels is they do puff up during cooking, and so you want to make the hole larger than you think it needs to be in a lot of ways. So I go until it's sort of like a 4-inch circle. So you want the diameter of the hole to be at least a couple inches, because it will kind of fill back in as the bagel puffs. About 4 inches in diameter, so that looks pretty good. So actually, I have to, one thing I didn't do that I should have done is I didn't prep the sheet tray, so let me do that right now. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil down on the parchment, and then a little bit of coarse cornmeal. And that's just going to really protect everything from sticking. I can get this down on our baking sheet, and the diameter of the hole itself is about 2 inches. That is that method. Now I saw a baker do it this way, and it's actually kind of a cool technique. If you have, this is a dough whisk. This is kind of the perfect tool for this. If you had like a, I don't know, like a wooden spoon that would have this shape, but basically I have this kind of dowel that has a taper here. If you poke it into the center, and again, this is not my technique, this is something I saw a baker do. I think it was Richard Bertinet, a famous baker. And you like roll it onto the ring. Makes it easy, I think. So that's the ring method. And then once I place it on the parchment, I do actually like to flatten it a little bit. I think it helps to give it more of that bagel shape. So now the other method is the like snake method. So basically what you want to do is form your portion of dough into a log. So if you're going to use this method, I would pre-shape into this kind of more torpedo look. You're going to roll it out with slightly tapered ends. Then you wrap it around your palm, overlapping the ends. Sometimes I even like to tuck one end under, like that. And then you roll across the surface to seal the ends together. If it is springing back on you, then it needs a little bit longer on the bench rest. Another thing you can do is after you've formed them, if you want to go back and stretch the bagels out a little bit, you can once they've had a chance to rest. And these are like a little under 4 inches. So I'll go back in and kind of widen them out a little bit. They're going to get covered in oiled plastic wrap just to keep the moisture in. So these are now going to proof at room temperature, which is basically like their second rise. It's not a particularly long proof because the point of bagels is that they are by definition like dense and chewy. So I'm gonna let these sit at room temperature. In the meantime, I'm gonna continue to tend the fire to bring the oven up to temp. It needs to be 500 degrees. So if you're baking at home, preheat your oven to 500. If it goes that high, if not 475. I'm kind of setting up my station for boiling, which happens before baking. So I have my everything spice mix. I'm going to get that out onto just a plate so that it's in a single layer. I'm going to add my barley malt syrup to my water. So I'm just going to grab a spoon. This stuff is really, really thick and sticky. It has kind of a crazy texture. You know what? I'm going to use this slotted spoon for boiling. And I'm gonna stir this into the water, and I'm not calling for a specified amount because it depends on how much water you have, but basically you wanna add this, stir to dissolve, and you wanna add enough so that the color looks like strong black tea. So that's usually several tablespoons. If you don't have barley malt syrup, it's something you can find in health food stores. If you can't find it, you can use molasses. So this color looks good. That was probably like 3 tablespoons or so. This mixture is coming up to a boil. So I want to show you a test for determining if your bagels are proofed. It's called the float test. See how it floats? So that means I'm proofed. I'm ready to proceed to boiling and baking. Now the problem is that my oven isn't really ready yet. And in the meantime, I'm gonna throw my bagels into the fridge, and that's going to slow down the proof process so they don't overproof while I wait for the oven. The oven has been firing for 2 hours, at least, almost 2.5. This is my firing door. I'll just put this down here. So we're down to coals. I mean, it's super hot. It's so hot that the thermometer won't read it. So now we're gonna rake out the coals. I'll put them in my bucket carefully, and I'll sweep the floor to clean it off so it's ready for bagels. We don't want to just put the bagels in now because the floor is so hot from the coals that it would just burn. Then we do a step called soaking. We basically seal the oven. We cut off the oven from the chimney so it doesn't lose heat out of the chimney, and we let it just sit so that the heat can sort of evenly disperse throughout the oven, throughout the floor, the walls, the dome, and that creates our oven for baking. Technically, is this considered wood-fired bagels? Not really, because there isn't really going to be any active coals in the oven while the bagels are baking. All right, these were really easy coals to rake out, and there's not even very much ash in there, which is great. I probably should have put this bucket somewhere other than just directly in front of the oven. How hot is this? All right. So there's just a couple of coals left in there. I'm just gonna leave it. And I'm gonna use my brush to kind of sweep away some of that ash. Sorry, Vince. All right, this looks great. Now we have a clean baking surface, and I'm gonna put on the baking door. The baking door fits inside the door to cut off the chimney. Kind of wedges in there. This looks great. And now we soak for 20 minutes. So the timing is really good. We're gonna go and boil the bagels in the 20 minutes that this is gonna soak, and then we'll come back out and bake. It's really hot. But without the coals in there, I think the temperature will drop. This is almost at a boil. I'm gonna grab one of my sheet trays of bagels. The boiling process is pretty quick. It's about 30 to 45 seconds on each side. And the point of boiling is that not only does it kind of coat the outer layer of bagel in this kind of like sugary solution, which helps to make it nice and brown, but it also sets the dough in that outer layer, and it makes it so that the bagels don't really expand beyond the crust that forms during boiling when they bake. So you notice, like, you don't ever see like a slash in bagels with like an opening the way you see that you see in bread. And you want to boil as many as can kind of comfortably fit inside the pot with a little bit of room for them to bob around. That float test is important, not just because we want them to proof, but because we want them to float in the solution. So I'm gonna watch my clock. I have a clock here in my kitchen that has second hand, so I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna do about 45 seconds per side. Now, when they come out, this is where the coating happens. If you're gonna do any kind of coated bagel, like I'm doing everything here, you could do, like I said, poppy sesame, garlic, salt, any of those. The coating happens when they come out of the water. I'm almost at 45 seconds. Now I'm gonna flip them over. So another 45 or so. So I have a little like damp paper towel here because I like to actually just let a little excess drip of the solution drip onto here before you basically just like set it down. You can sprinkle or you can just kind of set it down. So I'm gonna start taking them out and coating. So if you make these at home, you will notice a dramatic change in the texture, like they're now firm. So it's just a quick kind of dip in the seeds and then back on the sheet tray. Okay, I'm gonna set this tray behind me and grab the second tray. We're gonna boil those the exact same way we did the first. So I have all 11 bagels. It went up. Now it's in the 600s, low 6s. Dang, we're just gonna have to sit here.
But the top of the dome is always gonna be hotter, right?
I don't know, I guess so. Heat rises. Actually, hot air rises. You got a chair or something? I'm gonna go sit over here. Although 1 million chickens have pooped on this step, but, oh, geez. Oh, great, that's gonna go in. Just be here while this oven comes down to temp. Cal, what are you talking about? It's at 585.
I was just getting 530 and 560.
Yeah, that's at the front of the oven, but in the back, we're talking high fives.
High fives are good.
550 in the back. Okay, fine. All right, we're just gonna bake these. So I'm gonna load these in. I heard a little sizzle when they went down. All right, let me get the second batch. So I'm definitely gonna have to do some rotating because some of the bagels are closer to the front where it's much cooler and some are in the back. So I'm gonna set my timer for 8 minutes and then I'm gonna rotate. I think they're gonna bake really fast because it's really hot in there. My concern is that maybe the outside is going to get really dark before the inside bakes, but they're not that big. So we'll hope for the best and I'm gonna rotate in 7.5 minutes. Also, note, putting them in is gonna drop the temp because they're cold. How much, I'm not sure. This oven really was a project. Oops. So many different stages of it too. I really wish they had gotten closer with this pile of gravel. You know what it's called when you put the mortar on the side of the brick? You butter it. Wow, oh my God, I should bake in this oven more often. It's a lot of work. But good thing we have enough wood. You want to get like a shot of the wood piles?
Got that critter right up there.
Oh, he's so cute. I love them. It smells really good. I can smell the bagel smell, and it smells like a bagel bakery, not surprisingly. Let me take a quick peek. Oh my God, they look so good. Oh my God, they look so good. I'm gonna try to do some rotating. They're not burning. I'm actually really glad that we put them in hot. Okay, so that's my timer. I'm gonna set it for another 8 and we'll check. Let's take a look. They've been in for just about 15 minutes total. Oh, they're done and they look amazing. They're like deep. Oh my gosh, you guys, how, okay. I would say maybe the spices burned a little bit, but maybe a lot. Maybe they burned a lot, but that's okay. The bagels themselves are really nicely done. These are gonna be delicious. All right, timer off. I wanted to see what the final temp is in here just to see. Where do we land? 480s. I seriously could not be happier. I kind of can't believe it worked. I've not done a ton of bread baking in this oven yet, and there is a learning curve. But yeah, the spices burn, but everything looks great. I'm gonna let this cool off. We're gonna bring the bagels inside. You wanna eat a fresh bagel. A bagel that is fresh does not need toasting. So let's go inside. We're gonna dig into these. So it's early afternoon. Perfect time for brunch. We're gonna do like a whole bagel spread. That's what we're gonna have for lunch today. But while they're still warm, I wanna just cut and taste one and just like do a little plain cream cheese so I can really kind of appreciate the bagel for what it is. It has such a nice crust. I can feel it kind of like cracking as the knife goes through. Pro move is to take save all the seeds that come off of the bagel and stick them on top of the cream cheese. The crumb looks excellent. No big air pockets. It's a tight crumb. It's still light for its size. Like it's airy, but tight crumb. It smells so good. You can see how it's beige. That's that rye flour that we added. So that's just gonna give that extra flavor. This is a really, really nicely baked bagel. That burnished golden brown look, that's from the barley malt syrup. All right, so I'm just gonna give it a little cream cheese. Okay, so this is what you do. So chewy. I love the size, thin but very crisp crust. I love the addition of rye. It really does give you like a hint of pumpernickel. So it's a really fun project. You can make the dough the day before. They freeze well. You can revive it by toasting. And like bagels are best eaten fresh. So it doesn't get more fresh than baking them yourself at home. I love this recipe. It's so good. I love making bagels. I should just do it more often. I think more is more when it comes to bagels. I like a lot of cream cheese, smoked salmon. I like sliced onion. I like tomato. Throw some capers on there. That's great. That's my bagel. So thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.